It's also my pleasure and privilege to introduce our final speaker for today's conference, Milan. Mirik has, I think, one of the coolest job titles in the English language as night mayor for Amsterdam. But I know from conversation earlier with Mirik that what he has, I think, what he brings to the conversation we're having here today is a very human-centric view of the development and property issues that we've touched on throughout the morning. Ultimately, cities are about people. And I think the fact that we live in 24-hour cities, even though so much of our opening hours and transport systems are based on a 19th century model of what cities are like, I think it's important to hear from Mirik about what's happening in Amsterdam as an example of what the future might actually bring. I think there's something about a sure sign of a great innovation is when you hear about it, you sort of think, well, why didn't somebody think of that before? And I think that certainly applies to Mirik and his role as a night mayor for Amsterdam. It's about time we had someone in that role. So it's our great privilege and opportunity to hear from Mirik this morning and to learn about, from Amsterdam, what the future might hold for our city as well. Mirik, please.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. I think I'm going to shake this up a bit because that's, of course, my role as a night mayor. Well, you have seen this face by now. Actually, my wife said to me, "Come on, Mirik, you are the night mayor. At least try to look a little bit cool on the picture." So that's how this picture came to be. Before I tell you a lot more about my role as the nighttime mayor, of course, I have to say here in English-speaking countries, otherwise people will just start laughing. But I always say, I hope you will remember this story the next morning when you wake up. Rebel in a Suit, these pictures are all taken on my events over the last 10 years. I am a club promoter. That is my background. And I always say, so you guys know I'm not a politician that is trying to seize the nightlife to raise my own profile. But why is it important? Why is it important to have a vibrant nightlife in your city? The nightlife is a place where a lot of creative people meet. And what you can see, definitely in the Amsterdam nightlife scene, there's a lot of talent development going on for the creative industry. And I want to show you some pictures because where I'm speaking about is a nightlife scene which is not your regular disco where you have one price or happy hours, all you can drink, or where you have ladies' night. This is a creative nightlife scene where I'm speaking about what is happening in Amsterdam and definitely also in Dublin, but in a lot of cities around the world. These are some pictures from parties we did in Amsterdam. This is a once-a-year party, so it doesn't look like this in Amsterdam every weekend, of course. But this is a once-a-year party, and with this event, like 200 creative people work together to build it for the audience. There's like 1,500 people coming down. To explain where are these creative jobs, because I understand that people might not know what nightlife is about or late night culture is about. Where are these creative jobs? So, for example, of course, you have the performers here on the table. This was the opening of the event. There's, of course, somebody who's thinking about the styling, so that's a creative job. Then there's people, the makeup artist, another creative job. Then, of course, a VJ in the background, somebody who designed the light as well. And, of course, also the photographer who took this picture on this night. So that's why we always say there's a lot of talent development for the creative industry. So think of all the photographers, filmmakers, of course the DJs, VJs, live musicians, but also graphic designers or web developers. You can start in nightlife without having, it doesn't matter what your background is or your schooling level, you can just go out there, try to organize a party, get people together and create your talent, develop your talent over the years. And this is what happened to me as well. I started when I was 20 organizing small little events, and in the end I had a daytime job in promoting big events, festivals, but also fashion shows or photo shoots, etc. And I think this is a value nightlife really creates for a city. And I think we have to be honest about the fact that the night has an upside and a downside. And the upside for a city having a vibrant nightlife is the benefits it has from social, cultural, and economic perspective. So socially, people just meeting, of course. I met my wife in nightlife, and I think a lot of other people did as well. The cultural value, this is what I explained earlier, this talent development for the creative scene, and also the freedom of expression, which is something which is really important in nightlife as well. And from an economic side, having all these creative people living in the city will in the end attract the creative industry. And this is what happened in Berlin definitely over the last 15 years. It's a strategy for Amsterdam as well, to attract this creative industry to the city, make it more livable, and also taking care of the other 9 to 5. Coming week, example, the Amsterdam Dance Event is on. It's the biggest electronic music conference actually in the world. We don't have clear figures on the value of the economic impact of the nighttime economy in Amsterdam, but what I can say about the electronic music scene in the Netherlands is 17 million people living there. It has an annual turnover of 600 million euros a year. It creates 13,500 jobs. And so you can see this is a huge industry for a country as the Netherlands, and it's predominantly in the Amsterdam area. But we always say you can't buy creativity. Because if the nightlife is a platform, well, where will these people work during the day? And I think really the city of Amsterdam really understood that if you want to have these creative people in the city, you also make sure that there's affordable working space, studios, and living places for them as well. So the city of Amsterdam invested, and it's a serious amount of money, 48 million euros in 5 years' time. They really invested in this. So what is happening? They're creating cultural incubators. So they're focusing on rundown areas or more rundown areas. Definitely in Amsterdam, in the outskirts of the city, there's not so much anymore, but I think like in a couple of years ago, we had like 1.5 million square meters of office buildings which were not rented out. Half of them were more or less on knockdown prices. The money that you need to invest to reshape it is probably higher than to knock it down and start over again. But we wanted to rejuvenate these areas. So what is happening? The city invests money to create, to compartmentize these old office buildings, because office buildings, as you guys all know, has an entrance, there's a reception, and then you can get into the whole building. So you need to compartmentize these old office buildings, so you have small studios from 40 square meters, from 25 to 40 square meters, and some are bigger, maybe 100 square meters on top. The prices for these, the rent prices are really, really low. To develop the building, the landowner should be okay with the fact that like it's the people that pay a rent of 50 euros, so that's divided by 3 to get to the square foot price. 50 euro per square meter per year. So of course everybody here in the rooms know that you can't make a profit on that. So it's really used to rejuvenate these areas and to have city renewal in these areas, attracting all these creative people. So the area will be brought up, and the house prices will also go up in 5 to 7 years. And when it comes to nightlife, really often people think, okay, this is something bad, it's something terrible, we don't want to work together with these people because probably will only cause me problems. But I think there's a really nice example, and this is also why I would always advise to also look as a developer to your creative community and look to this creative nighttime industry as an opportunity. This is a big example in Holzmarkt in Berlin. These guys, they started out raving. You know, that's like 15, 20 years ago. They started organizing parties, and on the media spray, of course, when Berlin was brought up, and it's going much better now than before. All these fancy companies like Mercedes, and they were all buying houses, all buying big properties, making big office buildings on the spray. And these guys said, "Hey, we're here already for 50 years. Let's find a way." Let's find a way to together buy this land and try to create it in something new. And what they did, and this is what I think is so interesting, is like sustainable urban city renewal. You know, they have built in this area. There's like lodging, so houses which you can build to your own needs. They have kindergartens, and of course you can organize parties there. There's a theater and all kinds of things. So it's a mixed use of this whole area, and it's a really interesting area. And I think these guys, that's the serendipity in this story. They were just raving at first. They were not thinking about, okay, we're going to shape this city in a different way. And I really think that subcultures can influence mainstream culture in the end. So we always say no culture without subculture. So I really think so. So look at the nighttime industry also as an opportunity, not only as something which is bad. This is how the Holzmarkt looks today. So this is not like a coffee company this is really what these guys want it to look like. And it's a really interesting place where a lot of stuff is going on. So what is the Night Mayor? Or the Nighttime Mayor, as I have to say. The Night Mayor is an independent, non-for-profit NGO, which helps to ensure that the city of Amsterdam has a dynamic nightlife and a vibrant nightlife. So you have an attractive city. We really want to bridge the gap between the municipality, so the mayor and city councillors, small business owners like nightclubs and festivals, but also city residents. We always say is by having a dialogue, you can change the rules of the game. So why is it so important to have a dialogue when it comes to nightlife? Because what often happens is when there's a problem late at night, the first reaction of city officials or the mayor would be to say, okay, we have to stop this now. Instead of trying to get all the stakeholders together, which we would do during the day, trying to get all the stakeholders together and try to solve it or at least make it a little bit better. And this is something which I see happening everywhere in the world, and this is why I think this is the time is now to try to change the narrative towards nightlife and to change it in a better way. Because I really understand, like if you have your office in City Hall, I understand that it's difficult to penetrate the nightlife. And how can you make good legislation if you have no idea what's really going on? And this is something also the municipality of Amsterdam recognized back in 2003. Then the first night mayor was elected, but it was a voluntary position in the first now more or less 10 years. And when I started in 2012, I saw immediately that if you want to really change the city or you want to have influence on the city, you have to do this on a professional level because you're never really independent if you don't get paid for what you're doing. So from 2014, we established this non-for-profit NGO, and that was the moment where we really picked up speed. So what have we been doing? Or actually we have a process in which we work. That's also always the steps we take to explain to people why nightlife is important, what is happening. It's always about connecting people, spotting trends, making sure these ideas are on the political agenda, and in the end try to stimulate an organization. So what have we done? In 2013 we introduced 24-hour licenses for 10 bars and clubs. These licenses were not these venues are not located in the city center because the city center of Amsterdam is already really heavy dense. There's a lot of people there as well. So these are located more in the outskirts of the city, so in areas where nightlife can help develop this area as well. And what was really radical about this project is that we didn't only look at whether the practical side of it, for example, if this venue has like four walls, a roof, and a bouncer in front of the door, but we looked at the content. So we wrote like a strategy for how we want to shape these 24-hour licenses, and we asked venues that wanted to apply for it to send in a pitch. And we looked at the content, and we said we all want multidisciplinary venues, so cultural multidisciplinary venues. Because you also want the people that live around this venue also to benefit from the fact that the venue is there. So these venues often have like a bar, a restaurant, a gallery space, of course a nightclub. They organize theater nights, all kinds of things. So the people that live around it also benefit from the fact that the venue is there, and that's also where the support is created for this venue. why do we want 24-hour licensed venues? Because these venues are now, it helps to create a profile of Amsterdam as being this open-minded city and where a lot of good nightlife, quality nightlife is based. These venues are now all in the international spotlight. And all the people that perform there or work there, they are also in the international spotlight, and now they have international careers. But there's also, we always with the Nightmare, we always want to focus also, okay, so we have an upside and we have a downside of nightlife. So let's cut back also on the downside, also to create more support. So the 24-hour licensed venues also make sure that when the venue, so what happens in city centers is that when the venue closes, when the venues close, all the people spill out onto the street all at the same time. And if you push 1,000 or maybe in city centers 5,000 or 10,000 people all onto the street, of course this will cause a lot of noise, nuisance and a lot of complaints for the neighbors as well. So the 24-hour license makes sure that people don't spill out onto the streets at the same time don't spill out on the streets all at the same time, that they and that they are in smaller groups, so that's also more controllable for bouncers. And there's an extra set of rules that we set to these venues that when people are outside, because these customers, they can stay inside. So if they're gonna go outside, you're gonna go home. And you're not gonna hang around shouting, pushing each other into the bushes and all these kinds of things. You're just gonna go home. And what was really important, so this is, I think, a really good example of these venues. What I explained is also they're multidisciplinary. So we also asked them, we challenged them also to work together with museums, so museums can come more out of their white boxes and try to innovate and experiment in nightlife as well. I said I started explaining about the upside, and I also want to go a little bit, speak about the downside. So what is the downside of nightlife? The downside of nightlife is, of course, heavy drinking, violence in nightlife, and also nuisance and noise complaints, etc., but also the use of illegal substances. We have looked at this. We have looked at this square. This is like Temple Bay, it's called, right? In Dublin, it's Rembrandtplein, which is more or less you can say it is more or less the same area. And we have looked at festivals, or the University of Amsterdam made a report, and it said what happens at festivals. And on a festival, there's maybe 5, 10, 20, sometimes 40,000 people attending, and in the end of the day, you had one guy being caught for, a girl being caught for pickpocketing, and there was one fight. So why can't we apply the same thing to a nightlife square? And so that's why we started this project called Welcoming and Safe Nightlife Area. And we introduced square rules. Sorry, let me come back. Like what makes it at a festival is that it works so well on a festival, because you have easy on, easy off access. You know where to go. You know what the program is. You know. So if you are more aware of your surrounding area, if you like your surrounding area more, you are more likely to take better care of it. So this was the whole idea. We started the pilot project under the strong lead of our mayor, Eberhard van der Laan. And what we did, we installed square rules, which you can see here on the right-hand side. So, of course, probably you don't recognize this, but this is a lock in Amsterdam for bikes. But also stay classy, try not to disturb the neighbors, make sure that you're aware. So what we have done, we installed square hosts, so actually they're more or less like stewards. Stewards that patrol the streets every Friday and Saturday night. And they actually they function as your friends, so they make sure they can keep you out of trouble. The police is less visible on the squares because sometimes, and I really think that sometimes 4 in the morning, squad cars, police, horses, it looks like a war zone, and that's not welcoming and safe nightlife. So if the environment is better, profit will increase for entrepreneurs, and it will be more safe to send your kids to. But that was the first thing we did. It's working really well. At least, like we started a year ago. It's 15%. We have now a decrease in violence by 15%. But it's only a year ago, so I can't really say. Maybe it's just fluctuating up and down. but at least it's a good start, and the square hosts really see that there are less incidents on the square late at night. But there's another thing, and this is really important. This is like really always the focus on the municipality, entrepreneurs, but also residents. There has been, we have created together with the city a mobile device, like a simple mobile website in which you can report your complaint on a Friday and Saturday evening. And when you report your complaint on this website, this report goes to the first community officer, so police that write out tickets, which is in the area. And what normally happens, if you have a complaint, you phone up City Hall, you get to a help desk, 20 minutes later, it's like 2 a.m., you're awake again. So that doesn't really help you. And often they send then somebody down on the next Tuesday saying, and then they check it out, and then they say, okay, there was no noise, there was nobody there, dealt with this complaint. And this is, of course, for city residents, that's the worst thing which can happen, because you don't want to, maybe you don't want to report a complaint, but when you do, you want somebody to listen to you and to take your problem seriously. So people that live around the square with this mobile device, they said that it really changed their lives. And so this is an example of how we always focus on, okay, how can we support the upside, but also clamp down on the downside and make sure the city is more livable for everybody. So I would never say to the mayor, I speak to the mayor like 2 or 3 times every year. So I would never say to the mayor of Amsterdam, okay, we need more parties, we need more festivals, we need more of everything. No, we need better quality parties and better quality festivals and a better quality nightlife. So the city will really benefit from it, but we never lose the focus that also city residents are really important, and it's one of our focus points.